sorry about that interruption. I don't know actually what happened. Donkey. If you have a donkey of your enemy that is under a heavy load, and there's a donkey of your friend that needs to be loaded, so your natural inclination might be to go help your friend, but the Torah is telling you, no, go and help the donkey of your enemy. Go and help his donkey. Why? Because obviously there's a concept of taking care of animals and not causing undue hardship to animals, but there's also a concept of giving, and that when you give, that you come to love. So your enemy is somebody that you have negative feelings towards, that you have anger or jealousy or whatever feelings that are negative feelings that cause you to consider him to be your enemy. But if you were to give to him, it could change the relationship. It could make you more compassionate to that person, or it could make you come to change the relationship into a positive way. So the Torah is telling us to help the donkey that's loaded under by a heavy load. Go. I can't find the quote, but to go help the donkeys of your enemies before you help your friends. So I guess in an everyday, down to our daily lives, when we have somebody to help, and it could be this person or that person, and this is a very popular person. A lot of people want to go and help the very popular person, but maybe you want to go help the person who isn't so popular, or the person who is an angry person, and maybe if you don't help them, they become more angry. I remember my mother-in-law had a saying which she says, flood people with love, and they'll come to love. They'll come to you'll soften them up. The more you love people, the more soft they'll become. And so Torah is telling us, not that we have to listen, that my mother-in-law had, but it's true. Let's go and help those people that we have negative feelings towards, because it'll change our feelings towards them. So to be kind to your enemies. Go and help their donkeys. Again, we are to be a holy people. We're people who are connected to God. It's our mission. We are connected to God as well as we're connected to each other. So when we behave in a good and a loving and a compassionate way towards other people, we're bringing out the godliness that's inside of us. We're bringing out the godliness inside of us by being godlike, by imitating God, by trying to be like God. And then it goes on in this week's Torah portion to say that we must not ill-treat an alien. This is really important, and it's really important to bring this out. So anyway, here's the donkey quote. If you see the donkey of someone who hates you fallen down under its load, do not leave it there. Be sure you help him with it. Right? So don't walk away from your enemy. Go help them. It'll change you. It'll change them. It'll help the donkey. Right? It's a good role model. Other people will see you. You'll feel good about it at the end. All sorts of reasons why it makes sense to do that. I wanted to quote a quote that came before that. Actually, sorry, it's a little bit out of sync. But it says, do not follow the crowd in doing wrong. Do not follow the crowd in doing wrong. I don't know if, sometimes you see lots of people doing something and you get swept up with the culture, what your people around you are doing, if you're a lemming, and the lemmings are all jumping off the cliff, will you jump off the cliff? Of course you won't jump off the cliff. But we live in an age, no question, where social media is creating a culture, and everybody's doing whatever they're doing, and we want to do it too, because everybody else is doing it. So there's that human interaction, that human inclination that we have to do what other people are doing and to follow what other people are doing because it's in, or it's cool, or because they get lots of likes, or whatever, I don't know, whatever reason. But it's telling us in the Torah, don't be like that. We are. Abraham was described as the Eved. He was described as as Abraham the Ivri. He was on the other side. He didn't have to go with the flow. He did things that were different than what the culture around him was doing. He was doing the right thing and standing up for that, even though people around him were doing different things. So again, in this week's Torah portion, it says, don't follow the crowd, right? Think about what you're doing and understand what you're doing and do what you want to do because it's the right thing to do, right? So do those things. All right, so here's the part about taking care of people, right? Do not oppress an alien. Do not oppress an alien like a stranger. You yourselves know how it feels to be aliens because you were strangers in Egypt. So we're going to take our experiences, yes, and we say this all the time, right? Don't oppress people because we were oppressed, right? Because we know what it feels like. So obviously we've got to learn from that. We've got to be more compassionate. We can't take our experience and then become the oppressors because we were oppressed, right? We have to become different than the people who oppressed us. And then it goes on to say, see if I can find the quote that I want to say, which is to take care of to take care of the orphans and the widows. And it says that that God says, if the orphans and the widows will cry out to me. So take care of the orphans and the widows. When we were in Egypt, if you remember, we cried out to God and God heard our prayers and God came to help us. So we can't be the cause of other people crying out to God. And the orphans and the widows and the disenfranchised and the immigrants and all these people, they are like the widow and the orphan. They don't, so to speak, have anyone to cry to, right? The widow or the widower doesn't have a spouse to go to help them, to cry to get help from. The orphan doesn't have parents to go to help them. Like people who don't have a support system in the same way that other people do, right? They have a greater capacity to feel pain and don't have anywhere to go with that pain. They'll cry to God. And God says if they cry out to, if those people, those vulnerable people, those disenfranchised people, the orphans, the widows, the immigrants, I'm adding immigrants, if those people cry out, then you because of you, it's not going to be good for you. So don't do that. And we're told don't do that. Be careful. Be compassionate. Again, we're going to be compassionate for all people. And we're going to try, I think this is a good way to understand it, to be empathetic. So I heard an amazing quote about what empathy is. I think this is from Rabbi Sachs. And he says, so empathy is really about expanding your sense of self, right? So when we feel we're part, like our families, for instance, we feel very compassionate and empathetic with our families because they're an extension of ourselves, right? My closest people to me are the people I feel most compassionate to. So how do I, each one of us, how do we expand out who's in that circle, who's in that big embrace? So it can start off with being your nuclear family, but it can then be, your friends, and then it can be your community. It could be like, how wide does your embrace become? That the people become like important to you, your community, like you to love and to be compassionate and to be empathetic to more and more and more people, expand it out. So Rabbi Sachs says, instead of responding with anger to someone else's anger, try to understand where the anger might be coming from. In general, if we seek to change anyone's behavior, you have to enter into their mindset, see the world through their eyes and try to feel what they are feeling, and then say the word or do the deed that speaks to their emotions, not yours. Then do the deed or say the word that speaks to their emotions, not yours. It's not easy. Very few people do this. Those who do change the world. So perhaps that's what that's what empathy is, expanding your sense of self to include others. God includes everything in the world. If we have an injunction to be godlike, we have to somehow find ways to expand our sense of self, so that we include more and more people in that sense of who I am. I am more than me. I'm a family, I'm a community, I'm a people, I'm a person of the world, whatever. Like, keep expanding out those circles to as many people as you can, and do that as much as you can. So in this week's Torah portion it says, as another example, it says that when you lend money to a Jew, don't charge him interest. Well, why wouldn't you charge him interest? You wouldn't charge him interest because that person is you, right? He's your brother, he's your sister, he's you. He's part of your one. When we stood at Mount Sinai, we were one people with one heart. We were completely united. We had the same mission. We had the same experience. We were melded into each other. We became one entity that was the Jewish people, even though we stood as individuals. And as we spoke about before, we lost our sense of self. We came back. We lost our sense of, we died. We came back. But there was a unity that existed at the Sinai experience that we have yet to recapture. However, perhaps these laws are a device by which we can use. They're tools to help us to expand our sense of self, to include more and more and more people, so that we become one again. Like, if I help you and you help me, and I'm compassionate to you, and I put love in the world, and I spread light, and I unpack the mitzvahs, and they become more and more light in the world, then I'm going to I'm going to create more and more unity, which is one of the goals of our lives, to create unity such that we can get to the next iteration of the world that we're in. All right, so you're my holy people. If these people cry out to me, that's not going to be good. So you've got to take care of the vulnerable people. These vulnerable people don't have an intermediary. They don't have a spouse. They don't have parents. They're alone, right? So be compassionate for the people. Be kind to the people who are alone. Again, don't charge interest because he's your brother. Like, bring him in to your circle. So that we learn about that. And actually, it's interesting. Coming up on Purim, and the story of the Purim story includes Esther. So Esther was an orphan, and she cries out. God hears her, and so she's kind of one as we're getting closer to Purim to see that this crying out to God. The more people cry out to God because of things that we do that are not thoughtful or not kind or not, then we're not doing our job right. So don't be those people. All right. We talked about not spreading a false report. We talked about we didn't talk about this. Don't accept a bribe. That's a big no. And about not being a false witness. Right. We spoke about that. That was in the earlier. And then we have the 3 pilgrim holidays of where all the Jews had to come to Israel. We learn about that in this week's Torah portion. We learn about the laws of Shabbat. Again, that we're not in charge, that there's 6 days of work, where we're at the work days. So it's interesting if you think about it. Well, we all love Shabbat and we want to get to Shabbat, and Shabbat's great and let's have Shabbat. And we're going to work our way so we can rest on Shabbat. But the work, don't minimize the work, that the malacha, the work that we do on Shabbat, the work that we do during the week is work where we're unpacking the light, where we're working on ourselves and we're bringing that light into the world. So we're giving all these opportunities to do that. So that's an amazing thing. So let's keep doing that well. We learn in this week's Torah portion about not cooking a kid in its mother's milk. Again, we're learning how to be sensitive and compassionate. The relationship that the baby, the kid has with the mother isn't one that we should be insensitive to. We should be very sensitive to that relationship between the mother and the child. So don't cook the kid in its mother's milk, even if it's a different kid. It's not the exact. Don't do that. You need to be sensitive. We need to be sensitive to that mother-child relationship. So let's work on that by not eating meat and milk together, not cooking meat and milk together. Okay, so. Now we get, if you remember, we had this whole Sinai experience. God gave us the 10 Commandments. Then we have all these laws, and then we come back to the narrative. When we come back to, after we have all these laws, then we come back to Moses going up onto Mount Sinai. So come up. God says to Moses, "Come up to the Lord, you and Aaron and Nadav and Avihu and 70 of the elders, and you shall come up." And they go up, and they come down. And the people, and Moses, Aaron, Nadav, and Avihu, and the 70 elders of Israel went up, and they saw the God of Israel. Don't really know what that means, because we understand you actually can't see God and live, but whatever it happened. And under his feet, I love this, under his feet was something like a pavement made of sapphire, clear as the sky itself. It was a brick. It was a brick, a sapphire brick under the heavenly throne. Now, don't really know what that means, but some of the commentators suggest that God having this sapphire brick is God saying, when you, the Jewish people, were enslaved in Egypt and you were making bricks in Egypt, I was there. And I had this sapphire brick because I was with you in your pain. And you were doing all that, and I had this to remind me of your pain. Again, it's all anthropomorphical language. Doesn't really know what it means, but the message is that God is with us all along. Like whatever we go through, whatever we have to experience, whatever happens to us, that God's there all along. Even when we're making physical bricks in Egypt under the slavery, God's there with us. He's got his sapphire brick to connect to our pain and to connect to our suffering, and he's there with us all along. So he sees this brick, and the people say, this is where the people say this phrase that many of us have heard of, where they say, Na'aseh v'nisma, we will do it, and then we will understand it, we'll hear about it, we'll learn about it. Right? So there's a lot of commentaries on what it means when the Jewish people said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do it, we're going to do it, and then we're going to learn about it, then we're going to understand it, then we're going to get more laws from you. We don't have the whole Torah at this point. We have some of it, but we don't have all of it. There's still a lot more to come. So the Jewish people are saying, I'm in, I'm going to do this, I want this relationship with God, I want a relationship with God through the Torah, and I'm going to do it, I'm going to act, I'm going to get into the world of action, and then I'm going to learn about it, I'm going to hear about it, I'm going to connect to it in my specific way, whether it's, through this particular mitzvah that I love to do more than this one, or I do it through music, or I do it through, my particular situation in life, that I have these things that I'm involved in, that's how I'm going to connect to God. But each one of us, we're now separate. So when we received the Torah at the beginning and last week in Mount Sinai, we were one people with one heart. Now we're more individuals. We're different people. We're women and men and children and people descended from Moses and from Aaron, and we have different roles to play. But all together we're going to do it all together. So when the people said Na'aseh v'nishma, when the people said I'm going to do it, I'm going to learn about it. So each one of us has a role to play, and I'm going to learn about the ones, even the ones I can't do, I'm going to learn about them. I might live outside of Israel nowadays, right? But there's laws about being in Israel, so I'm going to learn about them, because I learn about them, it's as if I'm doing them. That's an important point. But together we're going to do that. So there's a legend that says that when the people said this statement of we're going to do, and then we're going to learn, then we're going to hear, then we're going to understand, then we're going to take whatever you send us. We're in this relationship, we're in this marriage, so to speak. I'm here for good. I'm committed. The Jewish people saying I'm committed to my relationship to God. I'm faithful to this covenant that I'm making with God, and I'm going to be here for the long haul. That's what the Jewish people are saying. And it says in the legend that 600,000 angels descend with 2 crowns, and they put crowns on the heads of the Jewish people. 1 crown for Na'aseh, for I will do, and 1 crown for Nishma, and I will learn, and I will hear, and I will understand, and I will listen, and I will grow, and I'll look for meaning, and all of that. But we get 2 crowns that get put onto our heads, and we have these crowns until the episode of the sin of the golden calf, which we'll read about in the future. But then they get removed. And Moses says that Moses is holding on, that somehow in the world, they didn't go back up into the heavens, that they're still in the world, and that one day we'll get those crowns back again. There will be a day when we'll get those crowns back again, when we live up to having those crowns put back onto our heads. So it's a nice imagery of these angels descending and putting crowns onto the top of our heads. So Moses goes up for 40 days and 40 nights, and it says that he goes up into a cloud. He goes up into a dark cloud. Moses entered the cloud, and he stayed on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. When he goes up into the cloud, and there's conversation about how dark this cloud had 3 layers of darkness, apparently. It was dark, darker, and darkest. It was very dark. And there's another medrash that says, a legend that said that God opened up a pathway so that when Moses comes through, there's a pathway for him. Either way, I think the metaphor, or the idea, not the metaphor, but the actual reality of Moses going up into this mountain, into this cloud, into this darkness, looking for God. He wants to have a relationship with God. He's going up as an emissary of the Jewish people. He's going to go receive the Torah. He's going to bring it back down and give it to us. And he goes up into the cloud, into the darkness. And again, we can use that as a metaphor for our lives. Like, we're looking for God, we're looking for spirituality, we're looking to recreate the Sinai experience. We're looking for those moments that are transcendent, that give us passion, that gives us, energy, etc. And we go through dark times, but at the other side there'll be light. Moses is going into the dark, but he knows there'll be light on the other side. We go into dark times, and can we be hopeful? Can we have belief that there'll be light at the other side? That we're all going to go through ups and downs of life, and there's going to be dark times, and there's going to be difficulties, and there's going to be things that make us feel like we're done. But then keep going, just like Moses kept going through that dark cloud till he got to the light on the other side. Okay, so So I think that's pretty much kind of what I want to say, but I want to just pull it all around. So again, we had the magnificent experience of Sinai with these massive revelation, transcendent reality, and then we came to an everyday, mundane life of how do I actually take this spirituality, this transcendent moment of God having this revelation at Sinai, and how do I bring it into my everyday lives? So all of that light that was shone into the world got packed into the mitzvahs, got packed into how we live our everyday lives. When we live our lives intentionally, when we live our lives with kindness and compassion and love, we're unpacking that light. We're bringing light into the world. What an amazing idea that we have the capacity to do that, right? We're not here for no reason. We have a reason to be here. There's something we have, each one of us, in our own way, in our own individual way, with our own individual families and life situations. And yes, we have choices, but we're also put into a life situation that we didn't choose, right? I didn't choose to be in this family. I didn't choose to have this hair color. Like, a lot of stuff is out of our control. So we have some choices to make. But we can also have a mindset that says, I'm going to be a partner. I'm going to be a witness to God. I'm going to unpack the light. And when I'm kind to somebody, I smile to someone, I learn Torah, I do a mitzvah, I light the Shabbos candles, I feed the hungry, I clothe the naked, I do little things like just smiling at someone. I'm bringing, or like we have this Torah portion has 53 mitzvahs in it. Again, social justice and what you do if you lend something to somebody, and what happens if something breaks, or what happens if you hurt somebody, etc., etc. It's all in this week's Torah portion. And when we follow these laws, these ordinances, and they might be ones that we come up with on our own, doesn't matter. We're linking ourselves to something divine and something higher and something more transcendent than ourselves. And how amazing is that? What a gift it is to live our lives knowing that there's meaning packed into every day, every moment. Right, so can we take the passion that we had at Mount Sinai and continue to have it? We went into the desert. The desert is a barren place. It's empty. There's nothing in this desert, right? There's no crowds, right? Don't follow the crowd. It says earlier, don't follow the crowds. There's no crowds. It's just us. Appreciate the world. Don't let stuff get in the way. Like, we were in the desert. We didn't have stuff, right? We didn't have stuff. I have a lot of stuff, but I didn't have stuff. We had the clothes, which never wore out. We had food that came down from heaven. We had water that came out of the rock. And we learned Torah. We had a relationship with God, right? So simplify. Maybe we need to simplify our lives more. Declutter our lives, just like the Israelites in the desert. They had a very uncluttered life. I cannot say that. Humility, the capacity to be humble, the capacity to minimize ourselves, the capacity to, like we spoke before, expand your sense of self. So it includes more and more and more people. I'm responsible for everybody. We are responsible for each other. We're not just responsible for ourselves. And again, it might be you're not going to change everything, but you can do one thing for one person or one more person. Keep pushing it out. Keep pushing it out. So all together, we're going to be able to do everything. But individually, we can't do everything. We can't fulfill all the things in the Torah and all the mitzvahs in the Torah. One person can't do them. We need each other. We need each other to do them, to make it the collective and to unify ourselves that way. So that's the fourth, is the unity. That when we were at Sinai, we had the revelation, we were one soul. And now we had that unity of one soul, one heart. We were all in it together. We all were together. And now we feel more separate, and it's more of our job to bring each other together. So through learning, through loving, through being compassionate, through being kind, by learning. I think learning is like the fundamental foundation of how we learn how to live our lives in this world, right? I think we need to recognize that we need to keep learning, and we need to keep learning again and again and again and again. And every time you learn it, you'll learn something different, because you're in a different place and you have different experiences and you're a different person. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. I'm sorry that the video got split up in the middle, but that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the everyday life. We're talking about the mitzvahs that have light packed into them. We're talking about being kind and respectful and doing kindnesses for other people. We're talking about being in relationship to God, who gave us this Torah, gave us these laws, told us how to be. So let's see how much we can do that, and let's try to do it together, and let's continue to learn together, and to continue our journey together. And I don't think there was anything else that I wanted to say. And it's actually, when these angels came down and they put crowns on the Jewish people, these crowns of Na'aseh and Nishma, one for doing and one for learning and hearing and seeing and being, right? We got these two crowns, but the angels said, like, how is it that these people are being angelic? Because apparently the angels in the heavens, that's what they say. They say, we're going to do it, whatever God tells us we're going to do, and then we're going to learn about it. We're going to do it, and then we're going to hearken. So at that point where we said those words of will do and will listen, we became like the angels. So I wonder whether we can become more like angels, and that there is the capacity for us to keep growing and keep learning and keep doing and keep getting better and being and reflecting and minimizing ourselves, and all of these things that we continue to do throughout our lifetimes, that we should have the strength to do that, that we should encourage each other to do that, that we should be able to really, all of us, continue to change the world, one moment, one day, one person, one act, one thought, one kindness at a time. So I wish you all a good week.